The first topic we'll be discussing today is the issues related to hunger. So this is a part of your GS syllabus 2 or your GS syllabus 1 as well, which has issues related to poverty also included in it. So when it comes to issues related to hunger, we have already previously discussed a lot about hunger and the issues related to it. So in this particular editorial, it is just two important quick points that we need to remember. So the first thing is that the Global Hunger Index has now released its data or the rankings, and we have to see where is India placed in the Global Hunger Index. And the second important thing that we have to see is how is India performing. That is, we also have to know something to talk about India's comparison with its peers who are in the similar levels of development or in the BRICS region, so that we can compare India and how it is performing compared to its peers. So these are the two quick points we'll be looking at. So first, the Global Hunger Index ranking has placed India at 94th position out of 107 countries. So this is a poor ranking. So this itself shows that India has a lot of issues related to hunger. And we have also seen how much India is suffering from malnutrition. Previously, we have seen the issues related to malnutrition holistically. So India is ranked at 97 out of 107 countries. This is the first thing. The second thing is the comparison. So when we compare India's performance with the BRICS countries, then India ranks the lowest. It is lower even compared to the Pakistan also, and even in the South Asian region, India's ranking is inferior to Pakistan. It's lower than Sri Lanka, Bangladesh, Nepal. So all the South Asian countries also, India is lagging behind. And even in the BRICS, India is among the worst performing countries in the BRICS also. So this shows the comparison of India's performance in the BRICS and also in the among the South Asian neighbors. So these are the two quick points that you need to understand from this editorial. Now let's move on to the next topic. So before that, you must understand that Global Hunger Index data should be used whenever you're talking about any question on malnutrition, hunger, poverty. So in all such cases, you will have to be using this data. So now we move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to the Office of the Governor, about which again we have discussed in detail the recent issues and also a full-fledged question on that. And this is a part of your GS syllabus too. So what we are going to look at in this particular article is just a small quote by the constitutional expert Nani Palkhiwala. So as I keep telling you, make these small value additions in your answer to get that just 0.5 to 1 mark more in your answers. So in this whole thing, the only thing that was important is about the statement that was said by constitutional expert Nani Palkhiwala, which you can add in your answer. So let's understand or have a look at this statement. So Nani Palkhiwala says that the constitution was actually intended that the governor should be an instrument to maintain the fundamental equilibrium of the state, of the people in the state, and to ensure that the mandates of the constitution are respected in the state. So Nani Palkhiwala also said that it is the wisdom of the governor that sets a statesman apart from a politician. So I'll repeat this statement by Nani Palkhiwala. The constitution intended that the governor should be an instrument to maintain the fundamental equilibrium of the people of the state and to ensure that the mandates of constitution are respected in the state. Also, he believed that buddhi or wisdom was something that separates or sets apart a statesman from a politician. So this statement you can use in your concluding remarks, that this is what the constitutional experts believe and this is how the office of the governor should be. So it should be to uphold the spirit of the constitutional values, the oath that the governor would have undertaken to bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of India, and must maintain that federal equilibrium between the center and the states and not act in a biased and partisan manner. So now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll be discussing is the judicial accountability. So as it is about the judiciary, it is a part of your GS syllabus too. So basically, recently you must have seen that the Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister was in news. And this has a bearing on whatever the news was, that has a bearing on the judicial accountability. So first, let's discuss why judicial accountability itself has now come into news, and then we'll discuss the issues related to it. So what has happened is now Andhra Pradesh Chief Minister has alleged that one of the senior most judges of the Supreme Court of India has had a political unholy nexus with the Chandrababu Naidu government in Andhra Pradesh previously. So the government had done various corruption acts of corruption, and an investigation was supposed to be ordered by the High Court of Andhra Pradesh. So that time, the senior most one of the senior judges of the Supreme Court now, against whom the Chief Minister of Andhra Pradesh is making the allegations, he said that the senior judge of the Supreme Court actually controlled the formation of benches in the state high court so that the investigation of acts of corruption done by the government does not happen. And in return for this favor, the senior judge of the Supreme Court also got some plots nearer to the newly built capital of Amravati at very low prices, and later on the prices went on to skyrocket, and therefore the senior judge of the Supreme Court had a pecuniary benefit out of this skyrocketing of the prices of the lands there. So basically this is talking about the political and the judiciary nexus, where there is politicization of we can say the judges who are towing the lines of the politicians so that they may have some benefits out of it. So in this case, the judicial accountability comes into question about why some judgment was made or not made, why the High Court was supposed to order an investigation into the acts of corruption of Chandrababu Naidu government, but it didn't happen. So why? So there are so many questions in judiciary which requires the judiciary to be held accountable. For example, selection of some judge to be transferred to the Supreme Court, to be promoted to the Supreme Court from the High Court. So this is done by a collegium, and in the collegium there is lack of transparency and there is no set criteria why one judge was elevated to the Supreme Court and not the other. So this has led to a tendency of what is called as a judges appointing judges, and there is a lot of favoritism and nepotism that happens in this case. So here again the judiciary must be held accountable whenever some of those judges who do not have a track record of integrity are being elevated to the Supreme Court. In such cases also the Supreme Court needs to be held accountable as to why such a decision was taken by the collegium. So like that, there are several aspects which requires that judicial accountability should be upheld, and the judges must also be made accountable to the law of the land. So they are not above the law of the land, and they must also be made accountable. So this was the background of the case. So now let's look at what are the issues that concern the judicial accountability. The first is the in-house procedure. Now, whenever there is any complaint against a senior judge of the Supreme Court, or any judge of the Supreme Court for that matter, there is an in-house committee which conducts an inquiry into the to look into the concerns which have been provided in the complaint. So this is not an independent third-party inquiry. So this is an in-house procedure. The in-house procedure, it has an it is very much possible that there is an inherent bias in an in-house procedure, because if the people from the judiciary are themselves deciding if the acts of the judiciary are right or wrong, then there is a vested interest in among the members of judiciary to show that the act was right and it was not wrong. So in-house procedure always has an inherent bias in it, that it may not such an inquiry may not be very credible. So this is the first issue with judicial accountability, is that any acts of misconduct or in propriety by the judges of the Supreme Court, then such complaints, they are inquired by an in-house committee itself. So this is the first issue. The second issue is an inquiry by the 3 sitting judges. Now, whenever a complaint is received against any judge of the Supreme Court, then the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, Chief Justice of India, constitutes a 3-member committee. And this 3-member committee comprises of the 3 sitting judges of the Supreme Court. They are not the retired judges of Supreme Court, rather they are the 3 sitting judges of Supreme Court. Now suppose there is a complaint that comes against the one of the senior judges of the Supreme Court, and the Chief Justice has constituted a 3-member committee of some of the junior sitting judges. So don't you think that the junior judges will feel that this is a case against their own senior, and by inquiring into that in a very credible manner, and by bringing out the fault if the senior judge has committed any, then that would kind of risk their professional prospects in elevating to the higher ladders of the judiciary. So the sitting judges, if of this inquiry committee, if they are junior and if the complaint is against a senior member of the judiciary, then they will feel that it may not be right for the junior judges to point out the mistake of the seniors, because the seniors may then be displeased and they may not give opportunity for elevation of these junior judges. So this is the second issue, that the inquiry committee is made up of the sitting judges and not the retired judges. So the sitting judges will want to give a judgment in favor of the senior judge, in the hope that the senior judge will be pleased by this decision of the junior sitting judges, and therefore they may get some reward in return. So therefore this is not going to be very impartial or unbiased. This is the second issue related to judicial accountability. The third is related to confidentiality. So whenever any complaint is filed against any of the judges in the higher judiciary, then that complaint is actually kept very confidential. It is not given to the public media or for the people to debate and discuss about it. The complaint is kept completely confidential. So this was held by the Supreme Court in C. Ramachandran Iyer case. So in this case, the Supreme Court held that any complaints against the judges of the Supreme Court will have to be held very confidential, and it should not be put out in the public domain, because if that is done, it scandalizes the authority of the court and people may come to develop a negative opinion about the court and its judges. So that is the reason why the complaints are kept confidential. But the thing with confidentiality is that it is very easy for the higher courts to brush aside some inconvenient complaints. For example, there was a complaint of sexual harassment against the former Chief Justice of India, Ranjan Gogoi. So when this complaint was received, complete confidentiality was maintained, and the woman was not allowed to be accompanied by her lawyer when the inquiry was going on, and the inquiry finally exonerated the former CJI Ranjan Gogoi, and a report was published, but this report was never made public. So nobody knows what happened to it, and what these proceedings were not even recorded. So these were the issues that in the name of confidentiality, it is very easy for the judiciary to push the dust under the carpet, because nobody is going to know what is happening under the garb of confidentiality. It is easy for the court to put under the carpet some of the inconvenient cases. So this is what is happening. This is the third issue related to judicial accountability. So as I said, in fact, Supreme Court has itself highlighted that sunlight is the best disinfectant. But still, when it comes to the complaints against the judges, it says that if the complaints are made public and if they are not kept confidential, it will scandalize the authority of the court. But many progressive democracies over the years have ditched this archaic opinion that making such complaints public is going to scandalize the authority of the court. So they are not believing in such opinion, and so should India stop believing in the fact that making any complaints public is not going to scandalize the authority of the court. Rather, if any complaint is made public and if a very credible and robust inquiry happens, then that is only going to improve the image of the judiciary in the eyes of the public. So this is what it is, and in the way forward, it is very important to have, even if it is an in-house procedure, we must have an credible inquiry committee which comprises of the retired judges, so that they don't have to fear the higher or the senior judges of the court against whom complaint has been filed, and they can carry out the inquiry in a very credible and an independent manner. So this is a way forward, that it has to be an inquiry committee that is comprised of the retired judges, so that they don't fear the authority of a senior judge of the Supreme Court. So this is about the way forward and the judicial accountability. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is related to police reforms, which is a part of your GS syllabus 2. We have already discussed a lot on police reforms, and also we have seen a full-fledged question on the police reforms which have to happen. So in this case, we'll be brushing up a few things and also seeing a few new things. So one is that in spite of the fact that way back in 2006 itself, the Supreme Court in the Prakash Singh judgment has given directives which the states had to implement, there has been a lot of delay in the reforms. Even today, all the directives given by the Supreme Court in the 2006 Prakash Singh judgment are not implemented by the states, and so police reforms has never been a priority. So this editorial tries to give an answer to this question, that why is it that police reforms has never been a priority, and in spite of the Supreme Court intervention and the judgment of Prakash Singh in 2006, nothing has actually much happened on the ground. The first thing is about the unholy nexus. So the reason is that many of the politicians, the MPs and the MLAs, have criminal records, and they have cases which are pending against them, the criminal cases which are pending against them. So if the police is not on their side, had that been the case, then many of these MPs and MLAs by now would have been punished. So therefore, there is an unholy nexus between the politicians on the one hand and the police on the other, that the police is kind of providing a shelter to the politicians who have pending criminal cases against them. So that is why it is very important for the politicians to have police on their side, so that even when a crime is committed by a politician, then the police is going to protect the politician. So that is why the politicians do not want any reforms in the police, because that would take away the police from the hands of the politicians, but the politicians need the protection of the police whenever such crimes are committed by politicians. So this is one reason, and for this the editorial has given a good amount of good data. So the ADR data, the Association for Democratic Reforms data of 2018, it shows that 1,580 MPs and MLAs were facing criminal charges in 2018. So this shows the huge number of MPs against whom criminal cases are pending, and they need the support of the police if they have to continue to perform their roles as politicians and not get arrested by the police. So they will need the support of police, and that is why they are delaying or these reforms, or for politicians police reforms has never been a priority. So this data can be used to corroborate this argument. The second is that no penalties, even when the directions have been given by the Supreme Court, and for those states who are not adhering to the directions given by the Supreme Court in Prakash Singh judgment, there have been no penalties levied on states that are not adhering to these So let's take the example of the State Security Commission. The reason why this had to be established, the Supreme Court told that a State Security Commission should be established, is because that will take away the control of the politicians over the police. So the police transfers, promotions, everything is now going to be dealt independently, and the politicians is not going to have any control over that. So this, when we talk of the setting up of Security Commission, the State Security Commission, not all the states have set up the State Security Commission in the first place. And among those states which have set up the State Security Commission, only 2 states, that is Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka, have made the recommendations of the State Security Commission mandatory on the state government. So the recommendations made by the SSE is binding on the state governments only in Andhra Pradesh and Karnataka. In the rest of the states where the SSE is set up, even in those states, the state government may reject the recommendations of SSE, which it more often does. So therefore, there is hardly any difference compared to the previous scenario. And also, among one of the directions given by the Supreme Court in the Prakash Singh judgment was that the Director General of Police must have a minimum tenure of 2 years. so that there is kind of a stability of leadership at the apex, and that is going to help control the law and order and increase the success rate of the crime investigation. So some leadership stability is important in any organization. So that is what the court had directed, that a minimum tenure of 2 years is needed for the DGP. But however, this also has not been implemented. Only in 6 states out of all the states that have just in 6 states, the DGP tenure has been fixed for 2 years, and in rest of the states, this directive is not implemented at all. The third issue related to why the police reforms have not happened is the role of the judiciary. The judiciary did a good job in giving the directives in 2006 Prakash Singh judgment, and after that also it set up a committee. After many years, a committee was set up which to look into the level of implementation of these directives in the states. The committee also highlighted the fact that the states have not implemented the directives of the Prakash Singh judgment. But in spite of all this, the judiciary has been incapable to get the states and the center to implement the police reforms. It hasn't come down as strongly as it should have on the states and the center, which are not implementing these guidelines given by the Supreme Court. So therefore, the role of the judiciary should be more strict, and it has to come down heavily on the states and the center so that they implement the police reforms. So these are the 3 reasons why the police reforms is not a priority and is not happening in spite of so many directives and so many judgments. And just now I told that the Supreme Court had set up a committee to look into the implementation of its 2006 directives. You all have to tell me in the comment section what was the name of this committee. So that's a small homework for you all today. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic we'll be discussing is the issues with the Narco Analysis, which is a part of your GS2 syllabus. Narco Analysis is a technical tool which can also be in fact a part of your GS3, and there are ethical issues related to it, so it can also be a part of your GS4 syllabus. So first let's understand what is Narco Analysis. Narco Analysis is basically a chemical like sodium pentothal is given to the person, and it just kind of hypnotizes the person. It is believed that when a narco analysis goes on some person, then the chemical is given to that person and he's kind of hypnotized, and he is going to reveal the truth. He's going to tell the truth. So this is what narco analysis is all about. And the reason why this is in news is because in the Hathras rape case that we have already discussed about, so the parents of that Dalit girl, now the police is saying that narco analysis should be done on the parents of the Dalit girl so as to understand whether the parents are actually telling the truth or not. So this has brought the entire issue of narco analysis and what issues are associated with it into the forefront. So that is what we will be discussing in this editorial. So now let's look at the issues associated with narco analysis. So first of all, this points out to the flaws that are there in the police investigation. It is only when the police are unable to investigate and establish or collect evidence and establish the truth, when that is when they call for narco analysis. As though like with the narco analysis, the person is going to tell the truth and that is it, that will be like the ultimate evidence. So this is kind of pointing out at the flaws or the flaws that are there in the police investigation. That is all the forensic tools that the police have, and that is not up to the mark as it is needed. So the police are not up to the mark in collecting the evidence, in investigating the cases, in doing the forensic analysis, and that is why the police are relying more on narco analysis to establish or to in the form of an evidence. So this shows that the police investigation itself is flawed and it needs to improve. This is the first thing that this thing is pointing out. The second thing is the issue with human dignity. So in a narco analysis, when the person is hypnotized, the person may end up telling anything. Sometimes the person may end up giving evidence against himself or herself, so which is actually like self-incriminating. So this is against the laws of the Constitution, the articles of the Constitution. So there is one article that is called as a right against self-incrimination, which is a part of your Article 20, Clause 3. and also you have the right to life and liberty, which is Article 21. So this narco analysis, by giving one chemical substance and inducing sleep and hypnotizing the person and trying to get out some truth, is against the basic human dignity, and is also against the articles or the right to right against self-incrimination of 20 clause 3, and also the right to life and liberty of Article 21. So basically this is against the spirit of the Constitution. The third issue is regarding the ethicality. The ethicality is that the fact that this whole process is a torture. In fact, one of the medical ethics scholar by name Amar Jesani has called this entire thing, the narco analysis, as pharmacological torture. So this involves a lot of activity in the brain and is kind of torturing your neurons. So that is why he has called it as pharmacological torture, and he says that this is no less than the physical torture that the police gives. So by replacing the physical torture to extract evidence, by replacing that with narco analysis, which is a pharmacological torture, it remains the same, that the person is being tortured to extract truth, because the police don't have the capability to investigate properly. So this definitely is unethical, because first of all this amounts to torturing the person, and second of all the police want to hide their inability to investigate it using various and latest technologies and techniques, and for that they are replacing their investigation with the narco analysis. So that is why we can say that this is unethical, because it amounts to what is called as pharmacological torture, as said by medical ethics scholar Amar Jesani. The fourth issue is the media trial. So whenever any case is there, and if the police say that we are going to conduct narco analysis on such and such a person, or the accused or the victim, then it definitely hits the media and is going to make a lot of news. So just in this case, in the case of Hathras victim, so we know how when the police said that narco analysis should be done on the Dalit girl's parents to know if they are telling the truth or not. So this did hit the headlines, and the media kind of sensationalizes the issue, and it might lead to media trial. So this is the fourth issue. The fifth is the victimization. The victimization is basically here a very sensitive issue, because whenever this editorial gives the example of the Hathras case itself, and it says that in this case it is usually presumed that there is a kind of prejudice that the Dalits may lie. So what the police want to here make sure is that conduct narco analysis on the parents of the Dalit girl, and somehow prove that they have actually been lying all the time. So this is kind of victimizing the parents who are already now suffering of the Dalit girl, and they are Dalits and they were lying, and they are liars, and they have been lying in this case also. So it is a kind of victimization of the people, particularly the vulnerable sections like the Dalits, and to strengthen those stereotypes which are prevalent in the society. So this is the fifth issue that is associated with the narco analysis. So this is an important question about narco analysis, and you have to know some of the important issues that associated with narco analysis, and you must be able to make your arguments to and fro for this particular thing. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is about population and demography, and it's a part of your GS 1 syllabus. So basically this SRS report, which is the Sample Registration System Statistical Report. So SRS report 2018 has now been put in the public domain. So that gives us a lot of insights into how our population, how our demography is going to be, is there now, and what is its trend in the future. So because this is a part of your syllabus directly, we need to have ready some data. We have to keep it ready, so that based on the question we are able to use the right kind of data that is relevant to the question. So now we are going to just look at some of the facts and figures that are very important, which have been quoted in the SRS report 2000. So the first important observation is about the total fertility rate. So the total fertility rate, as the report is of 2018, so the TFR of 2018 was 2.2. So 2.1 is the total fertility rate, that is the replacement total fertility rate, where the population is going to just replace itself. So which means that almost we are there at the replacement total fertility rate. So in 2018, India's total fertility rate was 2.2. So total fertility rate means the number of children a mother can give birth to in her entire reproductive age. So that was around 2.2 children in 2018. And if the population has to be replaced exactly to the same level, then the TFR should be 2.1. So which means we are almost there, we are approaching the replacement TFR. So this shows that the childbearing has reduced, the number of children a woman has during her reproductive age has reduced. The second important observation is about the annual population growth rate. The annual population growth rate was 1.38% in 2018. So it was 1.38% in 2018. So that means our population was 137 crores. So this was the annual population growth rate in 2018, which was 1.38%, and 137 crore was the population of India. The next important thing is the comparison that you have to do, comparison between the previous SRS report and the current, so that you know how much the change is happening. So in 2011 SRS report that was there, the TFR was 2.4. So now in the 2018 SRS, the TFR is 2.2. So which means we are approaching towards the replacement TFR, and the childbearing per woman is actually reducing. So this is a comparison that you have to remember. Next is the population peak. So the United Nations Population Division has estimated that India is going to peak its population at 161 crore, and this is going to peak in 2061. So 2061 is going to be our peak, where the population of India will be 161 crore. After 2061, our population is going to be stable and start further declining. So this is going to be our population peak. The next important thing this is talking about is the trends in the fertility. So the report, SRS 2018 report, observes that the states like the northern states or the Bimaru states, where the social indicators are usually poor, like the health, access to health, access to education, and access to good nutrition are bad, the total fertility rate is higher. So for that, it gives data regarding the TFR of various states in this region. For instance, in Bihar, the TFR is 3.2. For UP, the TFR is 2.9. For MP, it is 2.7. And for Rajasthan, it is 2.5. So this means that these poorer states are those states where the women are bearing more and more number of children, and the TFR is more. So this is the trend in the fertility, or we can say the interstate or the state-wise what is the trend that is happening in fertility. So these poorer states are those states which have a higher TFR, and the southern states which are more developed in terms of the access to education and health, they have a lower total fertility rate. So the report also says that this difference happens because of the social setting and the program strength. Now let's understand these two terms. When the report says social setting, it means the access to education, which is very important. So the report has observed through data collection that in those states where the education attainment of the woman is more, the total fertility rate is less. That is, more educated the woman is, less is the total fertility rate. So less will be the number of children the woman is going to bear. So for this, one data that you have to remember, which is important, is the illiterate woman in the reproductive age is considered as 15 to 49 years. So in this age, the illiterate women, whoever are there, they have a higher fertility rate than the literate woman in the same age group. So this is important for you to remember. The next important term is the program strength. Here, program strength refers to the things like the need for contraception and whether it has been met or not. So wherever the woman might have had contraception and the birth could have been prevented, but just because the contraception was demanded but it was not available, it was not accessible by the woman, she went on to become pregnant and went on to have a baby. So there are those cases also, and that is one reason why the TFR could be higher also. So where the program strength is good, that is where the women, when they are demanding the contraception, they have access to it, there the TFR is relatively low, because women have contraception and they don't either they are planning for babies later, or they don't want to plan for baby, or sometimes it happens accidentally. So therefore program strength is the access to or the unmet demand for contraceptives. Where it is met, the TFR is low. So this is what it is about. And the last and the most important observation about the SRS report is a falling sex ratio at birth. So sex ratio at birth, what is the normal sex ratio at birth is it is given as 950 females per every 1000 male. This is called as a normal sex ratio at birth. But however, it was observed that in 2011 report, the sex ratio at birth was 906, and now that is in 2018 SRS report, the sex ratio at birth have fallen to 899. So you can represent this in the form of a graph. So there is a falling sex ratio at birth. So this is a very important observation that you have to remember along with the name of the report. So whenever you are talking about the missing woman or the sun meta preference and the falling child sex ratio, so this data you have to use in such answers. So that is very important, and you should also understand what implications this has. So falling sex ratio at birth, it means that it is also going to have an impact on not just how the women are brought up, that the woman is a least priority, or a girl child is a least priority, so there is no investment going into her health or education. That is one thing. And also the falling sex ratio at birth will have a large implication on the institution of marriage itself. So there have been cases where states like Haryana have been into the state of Haryana, women are trafficked from across the country, where they can serve as wives of the men there, because there the birth of the girl child is not welcomed and the sex ratio at birth is very low in Haryana. So such trafficking of women will also happen if the child sex ratio or the sex ratio at birth keeps falling. So you must also understand the critical implications of the falling sex ratio at birth. So these were the other important observations from the SRS 2018 report, which you must keep in mind and use in the answers based on the demand of the question. Now let's move on to the next topic. The next topic is the issues related to subsidies, which is a part of your GS3 syllabus. So this is a direct topic of the syllabus, which is talking about the subsidies and what are the issues related to various subsidies given to the farmers or any other section. So this particular editorial is talking basically about the fertilizer subsidy that is being given, and what are all the issues associated with the fertilizer subsidies that are being given. So in that, basically you have to know that when we talk of the fertilizers in India, the three main fertilizers which are used are the N, P and the K. So NPK fertilizers, in that mostly it is the urea which is used, which is the most important fertilizer that is used. So the farmers end up using a lot of urea as a fertilizer, because first of all it is the price control, the price of urea is controlled by the government, which has been kept very low. So therefore for the farmers, urea is that fertilizer which is most affordable. So that is why they get more of urea and then use that in the plants. So there are various implications of how the skewed ratio of using these fertilizers and increased use of urea, what impact it has on plant and agriculture. We already know it increases global warming, and it has impact on the soil organisms, on the soil texture, on the groundwater also. Groundwater will get polluted because of increased urea usage, and all such toxicities will be there. So there are various issues associated with increased use of urea. So the first thing this issue is talking about is between 2009-10 and between 2019-20, the usage of urea has increased from 27 million tons to 34 million tons. So basically, why has this happened? This has happened because the government has still kept urea under the price control, while the other fertilizers have been decontrolled by the government, and the prices of the other fertilizers will be fixed by the market rates. So therefore, because of this decontrolling, the other fertilizers have become more expensive to the farmers, and urea is still very affordable to the farmers because the government is controlling the price of the urea. To just get an idea about this, since 2010, the MRP of urea has just increased by 11%, but the MRP of the other fertilizers has increased anywhere between 300 to 400%. That is, the price has become 4 times that much. So of the other fertilizers, but for urea the MRP has increased just 11%. So this shows how the government has controlled the price of the urea, and that is why farmers are able to afford urea more, and therefore they are applying more and more urea as fertilizer. So this has led to the skewed consumption of urea, and this is a problem that is associated with the way the subsidy has been structured. So this is one thing that and the second thing is that in order to motivate the farmers to go away from urea and to use the other fertilizers as well, government has come out with various other policies, like the neem coated urea should be used and nutrient based subsidy should be used. So like that, government has come out with the various ideas, but it is just not addressing the root cause of the problem. Basically, because the root cause of the problem, or rather in the government, when it is insisting that the neem coated urea should be used, like that the basic or the nutrient based subsidy should be used, the government is actually trying to control the diversion of urea from agricultural purpose to commercial purpose. When urea is subsidized, what happens is subsidized urea should be used for agriculture purpose, but however, because that urea is subsidized, usually it is diverted for commercial purpose, where urea has a lot of commercial uses as well. But for commercial purpose, urea is not subsidized. So that is why the urea that is subsidized for agriculture is usually diverted to the commercial purposes. So government is trying to tackle all these things, but however, it is not tackling the root cause of the problem, which is why the farmers are using so much of urea, which is because of the price control. So this is what is the root cause of the problem, and this has to be addressed first. So this is about the issues related to the fertilizer subsidy that you have to the next thing is last week we discussed a question on immunization issues. So good that I came across this article today, because I forgot to tell you the other day that we also have to talk about adult vaccination. So I forgot to tell the other day that we discussed the important structure or the important points, the dimensions that you have to incorporate in your answer. So one of the things for that is the adult vaccination. Whenever we talk of immunization or vaccination, it's always related to the children. So a regime for adult vaccination is not too much developed in India. So we hardly see any adults going and getting vaccinated, because we feel that once vaccinated in the childhood, that's going to carry off till the end of our lives. But we may need some booster shots in the middle of our lives to be able to have that immunity against particular diseases throughout our lives. So we need to have a system for adult vaccination as well. This is also one of the issues related to immunization. So go back to the notes that you made last week about immunization issues and add this issue of adult vaccination. So this dimension has to be there in your answers. So now we move on to the next topic. Okay, there is no more topic. So we'll be discussing last week's question, which was about the urban floods and what can be done to overcome the issue of urban floods. So I went through many of the answers that you have written in the comment section, and I'm really very happy about the kind of response you are giving to these questions, and you have come out with really good answers, and some of the answers were really good and multi-dimensional answers, and that's exactly what the evaluator will also be looking at. Some of you made a mention of the traditional concepts, using of some traditional concepts like Johats and Baulis. Some of you mentioned about some of the international case studies like the biowells concept of Germany. Some of you spoke about the Spawn City initiative of China. So the Netherlands case study, Tokyo case study. So you have learned the trick of the trade. So you are now slowly improving, and you know what is it that needs to be written in an answer. And as far as categorization is again concerned, that also I found many of you coming out with very good categories in the part of the solution as to how to tackle the urban floods. Some of you have categorized it as hard solution and soft solution. Some of you have categorized it as short-term solution and long-term solution. Some of you have categorized it as structural solutions and non-structural solutions. So whatever be it, just make the job of the examiner easier. So this is a way to go about. So others who are not writing the answers, please do write, and also read the answers of your friends who are writing in the comment section. Read the answers of others. You will be able to learn a lot from the others' answers as well. In fact, you can comment on each other's answers and review here itself. It doesn't take much time, and appreciate people who have written really well. So that will motivate the people who are writing also to keep it more consistent. So whatever it is, just you have to, one thumb rule that you have to remember is make the job of the examiner easier. So these categorizations, whether it is hard or soft or short term or long term or structural or non-structural, is going to make the job of the examiner, very evaluator, very easier. So this is what you're supposed to be doing also. So make this a practice of trying to categorize every small thing that you're writing, so that becomes more systematic. Some of you have even categorized it as meteorological, hydrological, under the natural causes, and in the man-made or the anthropogenic causes, again you have a number of points to write under the anthropogenic causes. So I'm really happy with all of your answers, and even if you read through the answers of the others, you will be able to figure out a lot of things. So do review your answers and motivate others to write as well. So therefore I'm not finding anything much to talk about today, and a few things that you may want to incorporate is maybe just the international case studies as has been written by some. So just draw a box kind of a thing and then write case study, okay, and then just mention your case study in few lines about the spawn city of China or the Netherlands or the Tokyo or whatever it is. So you can write that. And apart from that, there are NDMA guidelines. The National Disaster Management Authority has given some guidelines way back in 2010 on how to tackle the urban floods. So they include some very simple recommendations which are also not observed. That is, before monsoons, the stormwater drains must be desilted, the water bodies must be desilted. That is not done. And one of the guidelines says that all these low-lying areas in the cities, they must be converted into parks, so that first of all they can act as shock absorbers, and secondly also whenever if the damage is also caused, there is not much damage. So that is one more thing, that there is low impact human activities are done in these areas. Then similarly, encroachment should not be done on wetlands and all that. Then whatever infrastructure is there, whether it is the roads or the rails, they must be designed such that it does not block the flow of the running water of the rain. So these are some of the simple recommendations given by NDMA, which are also not followed. So make a mention of the NDMA 2010 guidelines. Then what else you can mention specially is about is there was one committee on floodplain zoning that was set up, which was called as a Sailesh Naik committee. So you can make a mention of some of the committees whenever you are talking about the floodplain zoning, because Mumbai, Chennai, they are all coastal cities, and the floodplain zoning is very important in these cities. So Sailesh Naik committee can be made a mention about. So more or less you all have done a great job. So maybe you can make an addition of the NDMA 2010 guidelines and also the Sailesh Naik committee. And if you don't know the recommendations of the committee, go through a few recommendations. Though the committee was not the committee was actually criticized for its recommendations, but there is no harm in just making a mention of the committee without writing its harmful suggestions. So that will actually be good, that you are aware of the name of the committee, that there was some committee that was set up on floodplain zoning, because floodplain zoning is very important. So through this name of the committee, you will at least be introducing the concept of floodplain zoning, which is important. So that is it about the question discussion. Now, what is judicial accountability? Why is it important? And suggest measures to ensure the same. It's a 15-marker question. There are 3 parts to it. So do give equal weightage and 250 words you have to answer this. Again, more and more people to write your answers, and also comment and review each other's answers and encourage your friends and your peers to write more. The other articles that were either not important or about which we've already discussed. There was one article here that was about the Green Tribunal. Yeah, that was about the Green Tribunal's journey, because the Green Tribunal has completed 10 years since it was set up. So that makes it a good time for UPSC to give this question in the upcoming mains, because it has completed 10 years journey. And why I have not taken up the discussion is because in the previous ICANN videos we have already discussed the National Green Tribunal and what are its achievements, what good judgments it has given, and what are all the issues that this tribunal is facing. We have already discussed that in detail as part of a question and answer analysis. So if you have not followed that, do follow it, because this topic is important. It has completed 10 years of its working. So the topic is important. If you have not done, please do it. So that is it for today. Thank you.